My name is Father Edna Downey. I live at the Pastoral Center in Bluefield, Connecticut, and it used to be called St. Thomas Seminary. When I went there in 1948, I was there for 5 years. Then when I went off to St. Bernard's Seminary in Rochester, New York, then my last 4 years was spent at Catholic University. So we're here tonight, and the topic of the question is, Ask Father Ed. And Father Ed has an answer for everything. Not that I'm right, but I always have an answer for everything. So when you get a chance, you can call me at 860-321-7405. So this is a short hour program, so please stay with me, because I'm going to stay with you. There are a lot of topics that people ask me about. One is a very interesting topic. It happened at Mystic, down in Mystic, Connecticut, at the Mystic Village, where all the boats are. There's a whale boat there and all kind of other boats. Well, one day, a young lady called Kim Sampieri told me that Our Lady is going to appear at the lighthouse at Mystic Village in Mystic, Connecticut. Now, the lighthouse is a complete replica of the lighthouse in Boston that was built around 1810 or 1820. And there are about 1,000 different lighthouses all over the place. So she said that Mary was supposed to appear at 3:20 Sunday afternoon. So I picked her up from Bristol, and we took her out, and it was cold. It was a Sunday afternoon, and boy, was it cold. So I was walking around trying to keep warm, going from one boat to the other, till I got boated out. And about 20 of 3, I went over near the lighthouse where Kim was kneeling and saying the rosary. Then suddenly, at 3:20, just like she said, she jumped up and ran over to a bench, and she started taking notes, writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And finally, she pointed to me and said, come over. And so I went over, and I looked at her pad. At the last page, the last paragraph, she wrote, Russia, China, North Korea are going to attack the United States on May 21st, 2020. Now, this is a private revelation. And she said, Our Lady, the Mother of God, wanted to know what question I had for her. And I send a question or intention every night to Lourdes Friends, where Mary appeared to St. Bernadette. And there are over 70 qualified, verified, scientifically verified miracles, physical miracles of the blind, the cancered, shriveled arms. There are over 7,000 claimed, but the scientists, some are Catholic, some are atheists, some are Protestant. They work together to verify whether these are real miracles. So Kim said that Mary asked me what I wanted to ask her. So I was all shook up, because every night I sent a message to Lourdes, where Our Lady appeared to St. Bernadette about 1850, over 150 years ago. So I said, I was all shook up. Then I said, what do you want us to do to stop what you're predicting? And what she was predicting was on May 21st, 2020, that the eastern edge of the United States will be inflamed and a big fire will come upon it. And I was visualizing a atomic bomb. And then I said, well, what can we do to help this? So I turned around and she said, dedicate yourself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and also to the heart of Jesus. And I look around, and so I got a prayer to Our Lady and a prayer to our Lord consecrating the United States to the Immaculate Heart of Mary and also the heart of Jesus. Now, this is a private revelation. I didn't see Mary. I didn't hear Mary. Now, Kim saw Mary, and she heard Mary, so she's taking these notes. And she was writing and writing feverishly, getting everything down. But the part that upset me most of all, where I saw Russia, China, and North Korea coming together to destroy the United States on May 21st, 2020. Now that upset me, but what upset me even more later on, because I remembered back in about maybe 3 days before that, I was watching C-SPAN, and there was a professor talking about the silent Cold War that's going on against us by Russia, China, and North Korea. And it was just coincidental. We're talking about the silent Cold War going on right now economically. We got the tariff war. And then we have militarily, they're building up all over the place. And supposedly Russia is giving North Korea missiles, whether that's true or not. And then also territorially, China's now building islands 700 miles away from China, closer to Vietnam. So it was interesting that those two situations, one of private revelation, and two, a public revelation of a silent Cold War between China, Russia, and North Korea, and the United States. Now, some people will say, I don't believe that. Well, because you don't believe it, that doesn't mean it's true. It's not true. A lot of people don't believe Trump is the president, but just because you don't believe it, that doesn't mean it's not true. The second point is that even if you believe it, that doesn't mean it's true. If you don't believe it, it doesn't mean that it's true. Your private revelation is a private revelation. A couple months ago, I went up to Boston, and there's a visionary, someone who talks to Jesus or talks to Mary, and she's from Medjugorje. Medjugorje is a city in Serbia. And Our Lady appeared to 7 young children and asked them and begged them to have the world say the rosary. Now, Our Lady still appears to these visionaries. Now, one visionary is from Medjugorje, but he married an American, so part of his life is in the United States. And one day I went up to Boston, to a church around Boston, and at 6:40, supposedly, Our Lady was supposed to appear. And right on a dot, just like 5:20 in Mystic on Sunday afternoon, right on a dot on that day, Our Lady appeared to him. And he was in ecstasy, where Mary was speaking to him. So we see these private revelations. Now, he saw Mary, and he heard Mary, but no one else saw her, or no one else heard her. Like Kim in Mystic says, do you see Mary? It was over the water. I said, no, I don't. Do you hear Mary? I said, no, I don't. So the question when it comes to a private revelation, it takes years and years and years and years before the church will officially say that was a true apparition of Mary. So we see, we got a telephone call, so I think I'll take the telephone call. Let's see if I push the right button. You're on with Father Ed.
Hi, Father Ed. This is Joyce from the
Hi.
Steuben County area.
And what's your question?
I have a question that might be a little controversial, but you're the father, you're the priest that I feel safe in asking this. So I want to know how you personally feel about same-sex marriage. And I want to preface this by saying I know people who have been married, I mean, they've been together, not necessarily married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And they didn't get into a relationship to have children. So it was just this bond of love. And now that people can get married, same sex, that this is happening. And I was wondering how you felt about that.
Well, what do you call it? I call it civil union. I don't call it a marriage. See, once we start changing the definition of marriage, then it can apply to anyone. Right now, I know a mother who married her, or had supposedly married her son. And I heard of a father marrying her daughter. So once you dissolve the definition of marriage, then it applies to anyone, any situation. So if you take the basic definition of marriage, it's where Jesus said, where God says, and the two may become one. He didn't say two men or two women. He said, when man and woman come together and procreate, so that the two become one. So the definition of marriage goes back to God. But once you throw out the definition of marriage, then it applies to anybody. A brother can marry a brother. A sister can marry a sister. So I call it a civil union. I don't call it a marriage. But what about the benefits of a civil union? Well, if a person's been together for so long and they adopted children and the union has stayed together, well, they should get benefits. They should be involved in the will. The partner should get benefits. So it should be recognized as a partner, but not as a husband or wife. I have relatives, I have friends, a young man who just so-called had a civil union with another man, and they call each other the husband and the wife. Well, that's a joke. It's not a husband or wife. It's not a man or a woman. I have another relative, they're lesbians, and they've lived together a long, long time. And they don't call it a marriage. They call it a civil union. And they live as celibates. They don't have sex. And they're dedicated to God. In fact, they're dedicated to the church. They're asking me to help them with the church that they have down in Bridgeport. So my answer is, don't call it a marriage, same-sex marriage. Call it a same-sex civil union. And that should have the benefits of marriage. But I can't see you calling it marriage because you're destroying the definition of marriage. And that who has a right to change the definition of marriage? No one. It is between man and woman, and the two shall become one. Well, you can't do that with two men. We can't do that with two women. Even though they try to have a transgender operation, they still have the same physical qualities of a man or a woman, even though they may say, I'm no longer a man or no longer a woman. That's up here. But physically, they're still the same sex. And mentally, they may be saying that, no, we've had a complete change. No. And notice that at least 20% of them, after a while, it kind of wears off when they're transgender. And there's a tremendous amount of depression that sinks in after a while. And many, many suicides, because that is not natural. You can't really change nature. So to answer your question about same-sex unions, they should have the same benefits of a married couple. But they do not get the grace of marriage. They don't get the sacrament of marriage because they are not married. They have a civil relationship. And by the way, I was reading a book. Is your name Joyce Logan, by the way?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I've been reading this book, Starving Your Fears.
That's my book.
That's your book. I was just looking at it, and I'm looking at your acknowledgments and so forth. And why did you write this book? It says Starving Your Fears.
Starving Your Fears. Yes. Wow. Well, thank you for asking about that. I wrote the book because I went through debilitating fears ever since I was a child. And my mother had agoraphobia, which was fear of really leaving the safety of your home to really, kind of simplify it. So people can certainly be fearful in their homes. So I began a journey of climbing out of a deep hole of fears, and I feel like I've been the guinea pig for people in many, many ways. I mean, from relaxation techniques to people telling me if I never ate a hot dog again, I would be okay. Or, I just felt that I could crush up crystals and put them up my nose, and maybe that would help. Any kind of meditation, any kind of therapy I went through never seemed to help.
Well, what was your basic problem then? Claustrophobia?
Well, I had claustrophobia. I had fear of heights. I had this, I had that. And it didn't always come all at once. But at one point in my life, I was pretty much housebound. And I had to work. And I had 2 little kids. And that added extra stress to it. So I learned how to, breathe right and to really have some coping tools. But still, that wasn't really enough. And I'll tell you the moment that I really got what I should have been doing, and perhaps what other people and therapists had said to me. You have to face your fears, and you have to feel uncomfortable knowing you're okay. So it really comes down to faith. And if it is the story of Peter walking on the water, I would have faith in God that God is going to catch me, that what's the worst thing that could happen to me? I'll die. Well, if I die, then I'll be with the Lord. So why am I still so afraid? And I thought of Peter so many times that when he was looking at Jesus, he was able to walk on the water, walk on top of his fears. And the moment he looked down and he got afraid, he started sinking. So I really use that for a basis, for my own fears, to keep your eyes upward, keep your eyes on your faith, keep your eyes on, whatever it is that's going to help you. And I was driving the car one day, and I was newly married. My husband was following me because I was afraid to drive this distance. I wasn't having a good day, and I was afraid. And it's not just a thought. It's very physical. I mean, you can have symptoms of a heart attack. Your chest hurts, your heart is pounding. You feel like you're going to faint, and then you're afraid you're going to kill other people while you're driving. So it's this duality of, I'm afraid of my own life, but what if I kill someone else with this car? Maybe I shouldn't be driving. So it was all that going on in my head. And I said, look, follow me, and I'll pull over if I can't drive. And he was following me, and I began to have a full-blown panic attack. My hands were shaking. Like when your foot falls asleep and you get that tingly? Well, if you start to hyperventilate too much, your hands get that tingling feeling. And it felt like my whole body was doing that. And I thought, I can't possibly grab onto the wheel. Now what do you do? And this is all nanoseconds going by. Like, what do I do now when I have someone I trust behind me and I feel like I'm going to die, but I'm not going to die? I can drive, or maybe I can't drive. Where is my safety? And then something really beautiful happened. I began to remember everything I've learned And I began to really trust in God. And I started to say, isn't this interesting? Look at what my body is doing because of over-breathing, hyperventilating, fearful thoughts, not keeping your mind on everything is okay. And the moment I started doing that, the symptoms started to disappear. And I thought, oh, this is acceptance. This is called accepting, kind of step away from your body in a way and look at like what's happening, why it's happening, and not running away. And so, long story short, but it is in my book, I began working with a group called TERAP, and TERAP stands for Territorial Apprehension, and they're out of California. And I became trained by TERAP to become a field worker and working with people who have these debilitating fears that can't get out of their house. They've lost jobs because they can't stay at their office or, wherever they are. And through that, then I became a therapist. And so that's what I do. My heart is with people who have such stress in their minds. And this day and age, too, my goodness, because of social media, because of politics, which really blows up social media, which makes everyone more nervous and stuff that goes around out there, I find people more than ever just need to know they're okay. That it's stress. It's stress that causes a physical effect on your body, and not to be afraid, to enjoy your life. It's the one life God has given us on earth. So, be of service to other people, because what God has allowed us to have, like that thorn in the flesh, to me that means then we need to help other people that have that similar thorn, to be of help to each other.
Question. I just saw your book. It says Janine's story. Could you tell us about Janine's story?
And I don't have my book near me, but I do remember Janine because I worked with Janine. And Janine was just this beautiful young woman who came into my office, and she was angry. She was angry that this happened to her because she was the type of person who liked to go out shopping, and and she loved going into Nordstrom's. And one day when she was in Nordstrom's, she was standing in line, and she began to have what now she knew as a panic attack. She didn't know what was happening. She knew she became really hot, really sweaty. Her heart was pounding. She just wanted to bolt out of the store. She just wanted to get out of there. But she had to stay in line, and she thought she was going to faint. The bottom line is she got through the line. She paid for her article of clothing, but she never went back. And then she began not wanting to go into any stores. And then it's not wanting to travel out much. So she had heard about me and came to see me, and she was just so angry that she was robbed of this in her life, her enjoyment, going out to the mall, going shopping. So I worked with her, and I use a form of hypnosis. And a lot of people get afraid of that word hypnosis. But true hypnotherapy is no one can control your mind. That stuff they do in Las Vegas and everything, that is just for show. And if people want to act foolish, they act foolish. But true, clinical hypnotherapy, it's nothing more than being in a relaxed state of mind and having a therapist say what you know is true for yourself. Janine wanted to get better. She didn't want to feel, what was a form of claustrophobia also? If you're standing in line, if you're at the DMV, anything like that, and you're feeling uncomfortable, that really is a form of claustrophobia. You feel like, I can't leave. I just waited a half an hour in line. I can't leave. And then you start to have a panic attack. So I worked with Janine, and it did not take very long, because what you really desire inside, and then when someone else guides you through it, your mind actually begins to accept that, because it's the truth. Your body is always trying to heal itself. If anyone out there ever smoked, and the first time you had a cigarette, I can guarantee you, when you inhaled, you choked, you coughed, you felt lightheaded, something like that happened. And that's because your body is saying, what are you doing to me? No, 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 don't do this. But over a period of time, if you keep saying to yourself, I need a cigarette. I just need it. I need it. It relaxes me. Well, in about 3 weeks, your body accepts the fact that, oh, you need a cigarette. So your body then is readjusting itself, because it's believing what you keep saying, and what you keep saying becomes your reality.
Okay. So in a nutshell, if somebody's got claustrophobia, they don't want to leave home, or like people can't go to church because they get a panic attack.
That's a big one, yes.
I got a friend he used to go to church, but all of a sudden he got in between two people before communion. All of a sudden he panicked, he started sweating, and he hasn't gone to church since. He's gone to a doctor, he's given him some antidepressive pills. But give me one point that a person who may have this problem of claustrophobia, anxiety, or panic attack, what's the first thing they should do?
Stay in the present moment. Stay in the present. If you're in an elevator, touch the elevator and know that it is not stuck at this moment. Okay. If you're in church, realize it's okay. And I think, the bottom line to that also is people don't want to call attention to themselves. They don't want people looking at them. They don't want that.
Yeah.
Say so what more often to yourself. And who cares? We all walk on this earth together. We all have our faults and problems. And if you say to yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen to me? That I'm going to faint and an ambulance is going to come and all of that? So what? So what? And sometimes if you take it, you extreme.
Well, that's a very spiritual advice, because I always tell people, live in the present moment. The past is history, left in God's mercy. The future is mystery, left in God's redemption. But live in the present, because that's the only place that God exists. And to live in the present has control of the past and the future. Thank you very much for calling. And
thank you for asking about my book. I really appreciate that.
I read it once. I read Starving Your Fears, because sometimes I used to get anxious going over a bridge, but I'm much better now. I fly over the bridge. I don't go over them. I go by helicopters. But I'm kidding. Well, thanks for calling, and God bless you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was an interesting conversation. And if you have a question, or we talked about same-sex unions, not same marriages. And we also talked about claustrophobia and panic attacks that you get. But I liked her advice of living in the present, and living in the present, and not living in the past. That's one of the problems I always tell people. Don't bring the past into the present. That hurt in the past, don't bring it into the present. That argument in the past, don't bring it into the present. So if you bring the past into the present, then the present really doesn't exist. Whenever I have a wedding, after the wedding, I tell the couples I charge more than anyone else east of the Mississippi River. And the bride looks at me, the groom looks at me, the in-laws look at me, and I said, I charge 3 things. So the whole congregation looks at me, who's this crazy priest? I said, well, the first thing I charge is a 50 cent. By January, it's going to be 55 cents. But send me a letter, after a year to let me know how your marriage went, to let me know if you're still married. Because a lot of people, the first year doesn't even last. And that's very expensive. The second expense is that you promise to spend time with each other every day by phone or fax or email or flying pigeon or texting. Anyway, never let a day go by without spending time with each other. And that's very expensive to go out of your way. I know we're all busy, and you know how busy, what busy means, B-U-S-Y, be under Satan's yoke. B-U-S-Y, be under Satan's yoke. And he doesn't, you're too busy to go to church. You're too busy to call your wife or husband. You're too busy to spend time with the kids. You're too busy to go see your in-laws that are outlaws. So, in other words, someone's not your priority. God isn't your priority. Your neighbor isn't your priority. You are your priority, so you're always busy. One thing I do on a phone, if I don't want to talk to someone, why I say, I'm busy. What I'm saying, no, you're not my priority. So we're all busy, but the question is, what's our priority? So I told that the second cost. Now the third one's very expensive. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together at a wedding, I always have a collection. So everybody gives me a staring look, and I said, this is more expensive than any other wedding you've ever gone to. And then they look at me, it's going to cost you. I'm going to ask you to renew your marriage vows. And that's very costly, because I'm asking you to let go of the past. Every argument, every hurt, every disagreement, every act of jealousy, every rudeness, every pride act, every selfishness, me, myself, and I, let that go. And let this be the first day of the rest of your marriage. And just like the couple, we just celebrated their vows, this is the first day of their marriage, so this is going to be the first day of your marriage. Now, if you're willing to get up there and look at each other's eyes and then turn around and say to each other, I, John, take you, Mary, to be my wife. I promise to be true to you in good times and bad, until death do us part. Not until love departs, but until death do us part. And then the tears are going all over the place. Then I quietly say, okay, this marriage renewal is not valid unless you go on a honeymoon. And then they all start clapping. And this is what's happened. I've been doing this for 60 years. And this is what happens. They'll come up to me, Father, that was the most beautiful wedding I've ever gone to. Was it because of the priest? No. Was it because of music? No. Was it because of the beautiful bride? No. Why was it the nicest wedding you've ever gone to? And the answer is simple. Father, we've been married for 40 years. We never renewed our marriage vows. We've been married for 25 years. We've been married for 10 years. We were married just a year. We've been married for 5 years. It's all the whole gantum. That's why it's so important that really people get married in their church or their synagogue, wherever it is, or their mosque, whatever your religious background is. But you need to have God in that relationship. And if you leave God out that relationship, you're leaving love out of that relationship, because God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in that person. So when you think about marriage, you think about a man and a woman. You don't think about a man and man. Some of my best friends are gay. Some of my best friends are lesbians. And we always will be friends. And I respect their decision. But that doesn't mean I agree with that decision. A lot of times you respect somebody's decision, but that doesn't mean you agree with that decision. I respect the president, but that doesn't mean I agree with the president all the time. So I respect you, but that doesn't mean I agree with you all the time. And I hope you respect me, but that doesn't mean you're going to agree with me all the time. Now, I'm going to go to another story. This is a story about the devil. Now, my question is, do you believe in a devil? B-U-S-Y means be under Satan's yoke. Do you know the word devil means divide? That the devil means divide? So how many marriages do you know that have been divided because of a sinful behavior? I have these billboards all over the place. And the billboards say, I love you, Jesus. Mary, I love you. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I love you. I've got them all over the place. Just last week, a woman called me up and she said, I've committed adultery. And I'm guilty. I need to go to confession. Confession is like getting a hug from God. Just like when a child, how does a child know that he's forgiven? He gets a hug from mommy or daddy. Then he knows he's been forgiven, or a kiss, or something, some gesture. So now we look at this woman who's committed adultery. And I said, well, where do you live? She says, well, I live in Bloomfield. I says, well, why don't I meet you in the parking lot where the AMC theater is? And so I went there, and there she was. And she felt tremendously, tremendously guilty for being unfaithful to her husband. And the so-called boyfriend says, well, it's not going to affect me at all. He's divorced, but it's no problem with me. But she says, it's a problem with me. I've got a husband, I've got 3 children, I've got a marriage. So she felt very, very guilty. And today we don't call marriage a sin, we call it a mistake. But there's a big difference between making a mistake and adultery. Okay, I think got a phone call. Father Ed.
Yes, Father.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Something about your Good News Fund. What's your projection for this coming year, 2019? What are your programs?
About the new year? Well, one thing I'd like to do is I have 12 different billboards around the state, and I have over 2 million cars that go by that on a monthly basis. They're not 2 million different cars, because one guy may go by it 5 times because he goes to work and he passes my billboard, Jesus, forgive me. But 2,000 cars go by it, and I project if only just 20% see those billboards. I know more than 20%. You can't go by it 7 times without seeing it eventually. So that's over 400,000 people that see those billboards, and all the billboards are prayer billboards. I love you, Mary. I love you, Jesus. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I love you. Jesus, guide me. So these are different examples of getting people to pray. Like somebody says, I don't go to church, but I'm also praying on the while I'm going to work. So that's one project. Another project that I have is right now helping someone whose house is possessed by the devil. And when I went over the house, I said the mass there. I also blessed the house. He spent $8,000 repairing his car because the devil dented the whole thing. The insurance paid for it. I gave him a rosary, and the devil ripped it apart and threw the beads into his face. At night, he gets hit at the back of his neck, and his girlfriend gets slapped on the face and gets a bruise. 9 of his monitors were broken, 7 of his mouses. He has clothing thrown into the toilet. Food goes all over the place. His television doesn't work. It goes static. So one thing I'm trying to do is get people to pray for the presence of evil in the world, not just at this place in Brewster, not Brewster, but in Windsor, Connecticut, but throughout, because it's obvious. Just turn on the television and you see the demonic presence. When we had 500,000 kids die from drugs last year, 500,000, and every 19 seconds, three people die from an overdose. So the project is to get people to get back to praying, at least on the highway, and to become conscious of the good that's in the world, but also be conscious of the evil that's in the world. And because
I also have your phone number on those. What happens when they call you?
Well, that's a good question. Well, when I get a call, the one call will be for, like I was talking earlier about the woman who said that she committed adultery, she had to go to confession. The next call was a guy who called me and he was spending $100 a day on heroin. Someone else called me and told me that his wife left him with her 2 babies, which were 2 dogs. Someone else called me and said, I just came out of the hospital at St. Francis, diagnosed with 4th stage cancer. I saw your billboard. I love you. I trust in you, Jesus, and I got new hope. A man's going off to work at the Hartford Correctional Office. He calls me, and I said, "You going to work?" He says, "No, I'm a correction officer, but I'm going to see my son in prison." Another lady called me and said, "My daughter's on drugs. How can I get help?" I remember a sad one. A man who called me, and he was walking on 84. I have a billboard that says, "I love you, Mary." And he called me, and I said, "Where are you going?" He says, I don't know where I'm going." I said, "You on drugs?" He says, "Yeah, I'm on heroin." And the one that upset me a couple of days ago, he called me up, and he was very depressed. And I said, "Are you on drugs?" And he said, "Yes, I spend $100 a day on heroin." I said, "Come on, you got to be kidding me." He says, "I'm not the only one." But so he's got a good job. Like some people come home at 5 o'clock for a drink of martinis. He comes home for a shot of heroin. So those are the one that really made me cry one day. It was a Friday night and it was raining. It was really cold. And I get this call from, I have this billboard, I trust in you, Jesus, on Jennings Road, north of Hartford. And a young man called and he said, "We're under your billboard and we have no place to sleep tonight." So I left Bloomfield and I went to the north end of Hartford there off of Jennings Road. And so I see this fella standing there with his girlfriend or wife and with his little baby, and it was raining and they had no place to go. So we put him into a motel, and then we tried to get him into a place in Hartford where they take in homeless people. So these are just some of the calls I get. There's never a day that I don't get a call. Lots of times I get people coming through Connecticut, and they've never seen these prayer billboards anywhere. So they call in and say, "What's this all about?" Many times they'll say, "You got me praying on my way to work," or they may call and say, "Father, pray for this intention," or "pray for that." A lot of people are looking for work. I get a lot of calls on that. And some people are looking for money to pay for their rent or pay for their food. So the billboard is really a parish without boundaries. That's what it is. So, any other questions?
Yes, I've heard you before, and so you have some little pithy sayings, little short ones. Do you remember any of them? What if I give you a test?
Okay, give me a test.
Okay, what type of a Catholic are you? A and P.
A and P? Oh, that's, you go to church twice a year. Ashes and palms. Okay?
Okay, CCC, Catholic.
A card-carrying Catholic. One who goes to church when they're hatched, matched, and dispatched.
What do you mean by hatched, matched, and dispatched?
Baptized, married, and buried.
Okay, CC Catholic.
CC Catholic, that's a cafeteria Catholic. He picks and chooses what he wants to believe. There used to be 10 commandments. Now there are 10 suggestions. They throw out the 5th commandment, thou shalt not kill. That you can kill. From the womb to the tomb, you can kill. Or they knock out the 6th one, thou shalt not commit adultery. And pornography, fornication, adultery is very common. Just turn on the television. Okay, any others?
Yes, there are no longer 7 sacraments.
Oh, they're no longer 7 sacraments, no longer 10 commandments. They're just 10 suggestions. Any others?
Yes, weddings and funerals.
Oh, weddings and funerals, WF. That
Yes.
people, you can tell that the people go WF. They go out, they sit in the back of the church because they don't know where to sit, and they don't know when to stand or sit. So they sit in the back of the church during a wedding or funeral and wait and see what happens in front. And then that's why Catholics always sit in the back and Protestants always sit in front. Any others?
Yep, LE.
Those who come in late and leave early. A lot of people like to be noticed. I had one lady drove me nuts in East Berlin. She'd always come in 3 minutes late into the Mass so everybody would see her. Then she'd turn around and leave early so everybody would see them. Well, a lot of people have to leave early because they may have claustrophobia or they may have some other problems. Okay?
Right.
You have
PC, practicing Catholic.
a PC, a practicing Catholic. And the one I like best is PINC, Pain in the Neck Catholic. Okay, thanks a lot for your call. My engineer is saying I got to say goodbye. So I'll say hello and I'll say goodbye. Okay,
Goodbye.
take care. All right, how much time have we got? I got to look at my director. Let's see, we got 5 minutes. All right, I got 5 more minutes, so I wanted to tell you I could make a call, but I know this fella, if he gets on, he calls for an hour, so I better not call him. But what you always want to ask, but are afraid to ask, what I'm asking for is asking you the question, maybe you could answer them. Why is it that going to church is laughed at? Why is rudeness an accepted form of behavior? Why is hatred a part of our life today? If you're a Republican, you hate the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you hate the Republicans. And family life, I've seen families break up because one's a Republican and the other's a Democrat. Oh, we got a telephone call. Yes, we got a couple of minutes left. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, any questions?
Father, this is Richard from Berlin.
Yes, Richard. What's on your mind?
I'm a little upset lately about the separation of church and state. What should I think when the Pope picks positions, political positions that I think are contrary to my beliefs and the beliefs of the administration?
Like, give me an example.
Well, like global warming. The Pope is not a meteorologist, yet he preaches a remediation for global warming that myself and many others believe is just a hoax.
Okay, well, it's a moral issue. Is it true that if we go higher than 2.7, whatever it is, that it's going to have an effect on all of humanity? So see, he sees it as a moral issue. You see it as a scientific issue. He sees it as affecting especially the poor. And just look at the fires in California. Who are suffering most from it? The poor. Who are suffering from these tremendous snowstorms in North Carolina that they never had, 20 inches, 10 inches, and 12 inches. And the poor are suffering. You go to Africa and the dryness there. So he looks at it as a moral issue, but the scientists are looking at it from a scientific point of view. And I was just reading an article in a paper today that in less 10 years, there's that a meeting in Poland on warming, and then unless they do get together, they say in 10 years, it's going to be more and more devastating with the higher levels of water and so forth.
But Father, they've been saying that for years.
Yeah, but things are happening. The climate change is very obvious. You see what's happening in the Arctic, where all the icebergs are melting, and it has been happening. and and it continues to happen, it's going to have a devastating effect.
Well, how about political issues like open borders and protection of the country from invasion?
Okay, well, that's another moral issue. What kind of responsibility do we have with the poor? My answer is to help them stay home and help stop the violence in Guatemala and Honduras and all the other countries. And yeah, there's got to be a way of not just coming over, but the Lord says, love your neighbor as yourself. So it is a moral issue. You see it as a political issue, but the Pope sees all of these issues as moral issues and not just political or scientific issues.
Okay, I certainly think that I agree with you that the problems should be settled in places like Guatemala and Honduras. Sure.
Yeah, but unless we do that, what do we do? They should stay in Mexico, and Mexico should absorb them, and just.
I tend to agree, but they're sovereign countries. So how much say do we have in a sovereign country?
Oh no, their Judeo-Christian attitude should be the basis for it, not our political pressure to keep them there. But it is a problem. I agree. It's a political problem. It's a health problem. It's also a moral problem, and it is a moral problem for us. What do we do? What's the best way to help them, and also to keep our country from becoming a global country and becoming a socialistic country? And no, I agree. Do I have the answer? I said no, but I think with the help of the Holy Spirit, there will be an answer. And somebody's given me the 2 minutes. So what's your answer? Okay, I give you a minute to answer the question on global warming. What did you say?
Well, the folks that push global warming put us in two categories. You either believe it or you don't. I think of myself as a skeptic. I don't see any conclusive evidence that that's actually happening outside the bounds of where the climate changes anyway. And in any event, it would be destructive to the entire global economy to actually do something about it, since such a small portion of it is actually man-made.
Well, okay, that's your humble opinion, and you're sincere. But my humble opinion, and my very humble opinion, you're sincere, and my humble opinion, you're sincerely wrong. But anyways, we're still friends. Okay, thanks for calling. I think I'm running out of time. Bye-bye. Okay, how much time do we have? We got 1 minute. Well, I want to thank all of you, especially Nutmeg and these tremendous people behind the scenes that made this program such an enjoyable program. And I hope before Jesus returns, I'll be able to return again. And I hope this show will be repeated 2,340 times, so that I'll be able to see it at least 3 times. So give me a call, and if you have any questions, you can call me at 860-335-2342. 860-335-2342. If I can't answer them on the TV, I could answer. That's my private phone. You see my number on the billboards, but because you're special, I'm saying call me 860-335-2342. 860-335-2342. God bless you, and may you have a night with Christ and peace with the Lord. Amen.